This is the community consultation meeting about 158 Borough Drive, which you may have gathered from the video that just shared. My name is Ian, and I'm part of an independent facilitation team that's helping facilitate this evening's virtual community meeting. I'll say a bit more about my role in a moment, but before I do, I want to share a land acknowledgement. I'm honored to give this land acknowledgement on behalf of Create TO and the city. Land acknowledgements are one way that settler descendants and non-Indigenous Canadians are able to pay proper tribute and respect as allies to Indigenous peoples on Turtle Island. I was born and I grew up in the city that's currently called Toronto, and both my parents are from Southern Ontario. My mother's heritage goes back to Italy and Scotland, and my father's goes back to Poland. And this land acknowledgement is intended to remind us all to be mindful of the treaties that are in place here and the peoples that lived here long before us. 158 Borough Drive, those lands are covered by Treaty 13, and they're the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And we know that today Toronto is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and I encourage you, wherever you are, to learn about and acknowledge the traditional territory that you're in, the treaties that are signed there, and the people who are important there. So it's important to us to start these meetings with that land acknowledgement. And I wanted to do that, and I know we're waiting for Councillor Thompson and the Deputy Mayor to join. So before, as he's arriving, I think I'll just begin with some introductions of the other people that have joined us this evening. There's a couple of people from Create TO, the city, and their consultants with us this evening. So I'll just say them by name and ask them to wave. So we've got Annalise Zonina and Kelly Dines from City Planning. We've also got Nima Kia from Create TO. We've got Paul Fisher from the city's Shelter Support and Housing Administration. And we've also got Don Schmidt from Diamond Schmidt Architects. And finally, you don't see his face, but Matthew Wheatley from my team is the faceless person there who's just likely doing some tech support at the moment. There he is. Oh, thanks, Matt. And I'm Ian, and so I'll say a few words about our role at Swearing Inc. So what's unique about our company is that we are not here to advocate for any outcome. We do not have a vested interest in the outcome. We're really here to help facilitate and steward the process. So what that means for tonight is that we'll be keeping an eye on the agenda. We'll be taking lots of detailed notes, and we'll be doing our best to make sure that we get to each of the questions that you have or the comments that you have for the Create TO and City team, as well as make sure that we document both your feedback as well as any answers and responses that the team gives to your feedback. So we'll be doing that in lots of detail over the course of the next 2 hours. And what we'll be doing after the meeting is preparing a draft summary of the feedback that we heard. So if you logged in with your email address when you joined, and if you're on the phone, we'll share some information about how you can share contact information with us. We will be sharing a draft summary of the meeting with all the participants that are here to make sure that we accurately documented the feedback that you shared. So while we're waiting for the councillor, I'll review the agenda. So we're just gonna put that up on the screen, and I'll walk you through how we had been planning to use this time. So perfect. So as I've already said, the purpose of the meeting tonight is to introduce the Housing and Now initiative to those of you to whom this is new, and to share and seek feedback on the preliminary development concept for 158 Borough Drive. So once we're finished with this agenda review, we will begin a presentation. So the city and Create TO have put together a presentation to give a bit of an update on the Housing Now initiative, some background as well as some detail about the preliminary development concept for 158 Borough Drive. So that's going to take about 40 minutes or so for them to do that presentation. Might be a little bit around there, but by 7:30, we will get into the discussion, and we want to spend at least half the time, if not more, of the meeting hearing your questions as well as any comments you have. So I'll read the questions right now just so you have them in the back of your mind during the presentation, but you don't have to worry about remembering these. We will put them back on screen before we get to the discussion. So the first question that the team was looking for feedback on is if there are any strategies that you would like to see explored to improve connections from Borough Drive and Town Center Court to Albert Campbell Square and other local destinations. So you'll see a little bit more detail about that in the presentation. Some questions, a bit of a mouthful, but it will be clearer once we get to that part of the discussion. The second question is if you have any ideas that you would like to see explored to enhance the pedestrian experience on Borough Drive, and if so, what those ideas are. And again, you'll see a little bit of the early thinking on that from the team. And then third and finally, if there's something you came to share or a question that you had that doesn't fit into either of those two categories, we'd like to hear that as well. So any other comments or feedback that you have for the Housing Now team. We'll begin our wrap up at 8:25, and then at 8:30 we'll wrap up for the evening. So that's our plan for the agenda, and I think we're at about the time to begin the presentation. So I know the councillor may join us still, and if and when he does, we may just pause the presentation so that he can say a couple of opening remarks. But I don't want to hold up because I see we've got about over 60 people that have joined, and I'm sure you're keen to learn more. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Annalie from City Planning to share to start the presentation, and then we'll get straight to questions and feedback. So Annalie, over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Ian. Okay, so welcome everyone, and happy to have you here tonight. Tonight we'll be speaking a little bit about two items. First is an introduction to the Housing Now program, and then we will introduce the development concept or the planning framework and the development concept at 158 Borough Drive. And then Nima, the development manager from Creatio, will take you through the project schedule. So Ian introduced the people who are on screen tonight, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of information about who the project team is. The city has the Housing Now program, which is overseen by the Housing Secretariat. So they're the ones who are the overall lead for the Housing Now initiative, and they really look to the unit targets and affordability of new rental units. But here we're talking about a development concept tonight, and it's city planning that is the lead in updating the planning frameworks to support the new development as proposed, or ultimately at the end of this process as proposed. So we are the ones that will be leading the rezoning application and the normal statutory process. Also joined here is joining us tonight is Creatio, and the Creatio is the city's real estate agency. And in the context of the Housing Now program, they are managing the overall portfolio of sites and working closely with the architects and consultants to deliver the concepts that you're looking at tonight. So a little bit about the Housing Now project. Housing Now was approved by City Council in December of 2018, and the key purpose of Housing Now is to use city-owned land to accelerate the development of new affordable housing. Throughout the project and the initiative, we look to use public land for public benefits. So principal among that is the affordable housing that is being proposed, but also we look to include new community facilities and improvements to the public realm. So that means the streets and sidewalks outside of the building. All of our projects are mixed income and mixed use developments, and they are supporting transit-oriented complete communities, such as what's been developed so far in Scarborough Centre. We focus on enhanced consultation over the process. So we're meeting with you tonight. There will be another meeting that reflects feedback that we've received through the development process. And then once a developer partner is selected for the project, they will be back out in the community sharing their specific designs and materials for the new project for further input. Housing Now is part of the housing affordability spectrum, and what this image shows is the range of housing that is available in the City of Toronto. This image is from the city's Housing TO 2020 to 2030 Action Plan, and you'll see that there are some buildings here that are shown in color, others are shown in black and white. Those that are shown in color are the types of affordabilities and tenures, that means rental versus ownership, that is focused, that is the target of the Housing Now program. There are other programs that deliver types of housing such as emergency shelters or social housing, but in the case of 158 Borough Drive, we're looking at affordable rental and market rental housing that will be operated by a developer partner. Housing Now is a citywide program, so you may be aware of other sites that have been in Scarborough, but we have sites in North York, in Etobicoke, downtown, and midtown, and these sites vary in size and complexity. We have many sites where we require new public roads and new parkland to support the complete community, but here tonight at 158 Borough Drive, we're really looking at a single site and the improvements that can be made to the public realm just at the site's borders. So a little bit about the program requirements of Housing Now. Housing Now is really targeting rents that are affordable to people who are living and working in the city of Toronto, but who have been significantly impacted by the affordability crisis in Toronto. And I think if we all look at how we've managed to survive COVID-19, and I'm sure many of you are here on the phone with us tonight, it's those frontline workers and people making moderate incomes that are really carrying us through this pandemic. And so on the screen here, you have images of 4 individuals and the average income that each of them are making. And these people are paying between 37 and 83% of their income on housing based on rents in Toronto today. And so I think we can agree that that doesn't meet any measure of affordability, and we have an opportunity to improve that. We look at a number of things when we talk about Housing Now. We have the affordable housing objectives, and that means meeting levels of affordability that help the households that I just talked about a moment ago. Compatibility with the site's context, so what's happening around the site, and ensuring that we have a significant number of accessible units in the building. 20% is the objective, and that all spaces in the development are accessible to people in mobility devices or otherwise. We look individually at every site. So at Borough Drive, we're looking at improvements to the public realm, opportunities to tie into the great work that's being done in Scarborough Centre about mobility. So ways to get to and from the transit and improve public streets, and also the opportunity to include a new nonprofit childcare space. Many people ask us through these Housing Now consultations, is this a done deal? How do I give my input into the development proposal? Ian and Nima will share opportunities for ongoing feedback after tonight, but we wanted to point to the fact that there are many factors that influence what the development proposal ends up looking like. The feedback from the local community and the broader community across Toronto is critical, but we do have council direction to use this site located at 158 Borough Drive as part of the Housing Now program. So we are doing so in a manner that seeks to complement the overall design and planning direction for Scarborough Centre. And for those of you on the phone who don't have a computer in front of you, we also look to the direction from the Create TO board, the feasibility of the development to make it work, the urgent need for affordable housing across Toronto, planning policy, the technical review that is done to make sure that we can flush the toilets and don't have uncomfortable wind conditions around the sites, et cetera, and input from the experts at the design review panel about how to refine and improve the development. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Kelly Dines, who will talk about the local planning framework at 158 Borough Drive.
You're muted there, Kelly.
Sorry, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I am going to give you a quick overview of the planning framework for the subject site, as well as just refresh your memory about the surrounding context for the site. So 158 Borough Drive is located in Scarborough Centre, which is one of 4 centres in the City of Toronto. It's also identified as an urban growth centre in the growth plan. Most of you know that Scarborough Centre is fairly well served by transit with TTC's Line 3, as well as local and interregional bus services. The centre is fairly large at over 180 hectares. It's comprised of a growing residential community, employment uses, a regional mall, municipal and federal government offices, and a variety of recreational, educational, and community services. As illustrated on this map, the majority of Scarborough Centre is designated mixed-use areas, which provides for a balanced mix of uses and open spaces, along with new jobs and homes. There are lands designated parks, which is the light green to the south of the site. And there are also lands designated natural areas, which is the darker green areas on the map, which most of you know as the Frank-Faubert woodlots. The Scarborough Civic Center is Scarborough Center's signature building and one of the city's most notable works of modern architecture. It was designed by Raymond Moriyama and it opened in 1973. Views to this iconic building are identified on map 7A in the official plan, with a protected view that's shown here in the middle, taken from the northeast steps of Albert Campbell Square. The Scarborough Center secondary plan divides the center into 4 precincts, with the site outlined in red here located in the Civic precinct. The secondary plan contemplates approximately 40,000 residents and 26,000 jobs over the next 15 to 25 years. It's anticipated that the next wave of development will be directly connected to the Scarborough subway extension and Housing Now. Planning staff are currently undertaking a planning study to refine and update the Scarborough Center secondary plan. This study will develop a robust planning framework to support the vision for Scarborough Center as a vibrant and sustainable transit-oriented community. The study will provide recommendations on matters such as built form, height, the public realm, heritage, community services and facilities, and infrastructure. The study is currently in phase 2 and is expected to be completed in the first half of 2022. There was a preliminary public realm plan that was developed as part of phase 1 of the study. This plan provides specific direction around the subject site, specifically for a direct pedestrian link between Ellesmere and Albert Campbell Square, enhancements to Albert Campbell Square and Park. It also identifies Borough Drive as an important civic street in Scarborough Center with an enhanced public realm and expanded mobility options, including cycling infrastructure. The City of Toronto utilizes a number of design guidelines to inform the review of all development applications. A variety of these guidelines will be referred to in preparing a development concept that supports the quality of this city asset we're here discussing tonight. The planning framework that I just mentioned provides some guidance on project objectives for 158 Borough Drive. Those objectives include supporting the vision for Scarborough Center as a vibrant, sustainable, transit-oriented community, creating a design that is sensitive to the existing context of Scarborough Center, including the woodlots, the Civic Center building, and protected views of the building, as well as an attractive, safe, and pedestrian-friendly public realm, enhanced and expanded options for active mobility, a strategy that creates positive design relationships between the development and the built context of Borough Drive and Town Center Court, and incorporating appropriate and desirable community services and facilities that support the proposed development and the surrounding neighborhood. So a little bit about the site context. The site outlined in the red box is immediately east of the Scarborough Civic Center building. There are a number of vibrant green spaces that support the area: Frank-Faubert woodlots, the Hand of God Park, and the recently reconfigured Civic Green and the new Albert Campbell Park. There are also a collection of residential towers in the area, supported by some office buildings, including Scarborough Civic Center, the Bell Building, the Federal Building, and the Kevrick office towers. Small retail operations exist in many of the bases of some of the condo developments in Scarborough Center, with the Scarborough Town Center Mall, Regional Mall, being the largest retail element in the center. Just south of the subject site and south of Ellesmere is the Bendale residential neighborhood. The red line that you see traversing the center here is line 3, which has 2 stations, Scarborough Center and McCowan. And the hatched line that you see just sort of in the top corner represents the future Scarborough subway extension running under McCowan Road, along with the potential bus Station and TTC Station just to the east of McCowan Road. The site itself is roughly 5,900 square meters. It has approximately 100 meters of frontage on Borough Drive and roughly 53 meters on Town Center Court. The site currently operates as a staff parking lot for employees of the Scarborough Civic Center, but it's also used as an important mid-block connection from not only Town Center Court, but also Borough Drive to access Albert Campbell Square and beyond. To the north of the site are the Monarch residential buildings. To the east are the Chentro buildings at 1 and 11 Town Center Court. To the west is the library and the Scarborough Civic Center, and south is Borough Drive and the woodlots. The next two slides just illustrate a few views into the site. This one is taken from Borough Drive looking north, where you can see a slight grade change from the street to the site. The next one is also taken looking north from Borough Approach East, where one can see the forecourt to the Scarborough Civic Center, as well as a set of stairs and a ramp leading to a north-south pedestrian connection. This north-south pedestrian connection runs along the west side of the site from Borough Drive into Albert Campbell Square. The above-grade parking structure results in a grade difference of about 1 story to the drop-off court, requiring the stairs and ramps. And this shot is an aerial view of just the immediate area, with the site identified by the red star. The forecourt, highlighted in blue, is primarily used as a vehicular drop-off that serves visitors to the Civic Center, the Public Health Building, as well as for wheel transit. It also provides vehicular access for city staff to the parking garage and access to the garbage and loading for the Civic Center. The green highlighted area is the north-south pedestrian connection that I mentioned in the previous slides that provides direct access from Borough Drive into Albert Campbell Square. And now I'll turn it over to Dawn for the development proposal. Thank you.
Dawn, just before you go, I just want to acknowledge that Councillor and Deputy Mayor Thompson has joined us. So Councillor Thompson, if there is any words you wanted to say now by way of welcome, you can, or if you prefer to wait till after the president, that's okay too. I just wanted to acknowledge that the councillor has arrived.
Sure, I think I'll just wait because I was having difficulties logging on and you already started the meeting. So I'll let you go ahead and then I'll speak at the end. Thank you.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Sorry, just before I'd like to Dawn jump in, I just wanted to state a few comments just regarding the preliminary concept plan. So we have developed a fairly detailed concept plans that our architect will be going through in a moment. However, I wanted to emphasize that these plans are in no way final or approved. These plans are being shared to help guide discussions and to provide visual frames of reference for the community. Our team has been focused on establishing a high quality of design and will refine the concept plans based on comments received tonight and over the next few weeks. At the end of this presentation, I will discuss the project timelines and future opportunities for community feedback as we advance the formal development applications. The current proposal includes 2 towers at 27 and 37 stories with approximately 600 total units. A 62 child daycare facility is also proposed at the ground level. At this time, we are targeting 50% affordability with a broad range of 1 to 3 bedroom units. This includes a target of 55% 1 bedroom units, 35% 2 bedroom units, and 10% 3 bedroom units. 20% of affordable units will be designed for accessibility, and 100% of common areas will be barrier-free. The proposal also includes new publicly accessible connections and significant enhancements to the public realm. And with that, I will turn it over to our architect, Dawn Schmidt, who will walk us through the preliminary concept plans.
Great. Thank you, Nima. And good evening, everyone. I'm Dawn Schmidt, Principal of Diamond Schmidt Architects, and I want to thank you all for joining us this evening and for giving us the opportunity to present to you this project, and very keen to kind of hear your comments and input. In addition to the team you've already heard from, I also want to mention our larger team, including Michael Leckman, my colleague and partner in our office of Diamond Schmidt, landscape architect Wei Ying DeGiorgio from the Planning Partnership, and you'll see landscape is a very important part of this project. Transportation planners, the BA group, it's been a key issue, and Blackwell structural engineers. I think to begin by putting the project in context, you've heard about the importance and the elegance of the neighborhood of civic buildings, the town center, Albert Campbell Square, residential buildings of a variety of heights of 37 and 39 stories, the library, open spaces, and in the center you'll see already sort of photo montaged into this image our preliminary proposal for the site, showing a 27-story building on the west and a 37-story building on the east, built around an outdoor courtyard, which really pulls the great woodlot of the Frank Faubert woodlot into the site. On next slides, I'm going to show a few diagrams just so you can understand how we've structured this site. Here you see a bird's eye view that with Borough Drive, of course, at the bottom of the drawing, the town center court on the east side of the site, Albert Campbell Square and the Civic Center, the round building on the left, the library, and the woodlot across to the south of our site. The site's currently, as I think you know, a public parking lot, and there is one level of parking below grade. And there's some slope on the site, which means that at the east end of the site, the parking lot is level with Town Center Court, but on the west side, you can tuck in to the below grade parking level off the forecourt of the Civic Center. I think the good design really starts with thinking carefully about the public realm. And this concept, we've really thought about, first of all, a barrier-free connection across the north end of the site, really running parallel to the parking garage wall of the Monarch buildings. And you see that arrow cutting diagonally across the site. And we're describing that as a WUNERF, which is really a primarily pedestrian streetscape, occasionally used by vehicles, but rarely. And secondly, we've created a barrier-free connection from Borough Drive, from the Borough approach east, all the way up on a slope up to Albert Campbell Square. And we're calling that a kind of promenade. It's a pedestrian and cycling promenade. And finally, the public realm in the center is formed by a south-facing courtyard that, as I mentioned, links with the woodlot on the south side of the street. I think then once the public realm is designed, we've really developed a position of the two buildings that accommodate these 602 units in that mix of affordable and rental units. The buildings meet the guidelines, the tall building guidelines, which Kelly mentioned, are an important civic document. And they establish, as you can see with the arrows and the dimensions, fairly significant spaces from the adjacent buildings. For example, the west building is 44.5 meters from the building to its north. The building on the east is 27 meters to the building to the north, but 52 meters, almost 53 meters to the building on the east side of Town Center Court. And the Monarch building immediately north of us is 27.5 meters to the building to its east. So you get a sense of the positioning, and those dimensions are wider than streetscapes, wider than typical streets, so they're quite significant. And I think the other important thing to note is that there's almost 40 meters, 39 meters between the two towers. So views, we're really positioning the buildings for views for all the buildings to really capture sky and landscape views and to admit daylight and sunlight into the project as a whole. Next, once returning to the kind of public realm, we've really organized a landscape strategy that really unifies the site, that significantly enhances the landscape in the community with a variety of plants, trees, paving, but it really creates a very strong pedestrian realm out of the landscape conditions. Part of the issues that we studied very carefully was really to ensure shadow impacts were minimized. In particular, impact on the neighbors, but also on Albert Campbell Square, which is, of course, an important civic space. It's on the northwest of our site, and we've located our buildings to ensure that there is daylight on the square from 10 a.m. in the morning, and shadows are completely gone from the square by noon. So it's really an important factor in how we've positioned the buildings in addition to the tall building guidelines. In order then also with the landscape to create a sense of pedestrian scale, the next initiative we took was to really create a podium, just a couple of stories high, that really unites the buildings around the perimeter of the site. It's shown in red, and you'll see more renderings of that in a minute. If we move on to this, we'll take a sequence of views to really sort of tour the building and tour the site. And this begins with an aerial view looking from the southeast. You can see the Civic Center to the left. You can see the town center court on the east. You can see Borough Drive along the bottom, the new streetscape, the library, the Civic Center. And so it gives you a sense of the scale of the buildings in relationship to some of the taller building to the north and the other buildings around. This is a view looking from the southwest. And you can see the woodlot on the right-hand side and how that court between the two buildings is really fully accessible at grade and really draws the landscape of the woodlot into the midst of the two towers as a whole. This is a view now down at eye level, at the pedestrian level, standing on Borough Drive, looking at the courtyard between the two buildings, looking towards the west, and the west entrance to the west building, which is fully accessible from the court, both the entrance and, of course, the courtyard between. Another view, still on the south side of Borough Drive, still on the woodlot side. You can see on the left-hand side, the accessible promenade that extends with a slight slope, totally accessible slope up to the north, linking to Albert Campbell Square. You see the courtyard between the two buildings and a very significant, as Nima mentioned, daycare space, which has childcare space in that outdoor courtyard, south-facing. This is moving a little farther west along Borough Drive. You see on the left-hand side the library and its wood structure on the left-hand side of the image. And you can see the kind of streetscape, which will also undergo significant improvements that I'll talk about in a minute. And between the library and the tower is where the promenade extending up to Albert Campbell Square connects to Borough Drive. Here we are standing in the kind of forecourt, that space that is between the library and our site, and south of the Civic Center. And you can see the promenade that slopes from the Borough Center elevation on the right-hand side of the image on the south, and it slopes across the image up towards Albert Campbell Square in a totally accessible slope. And it also, you can see that we can tuck a vehicle entrance into below grade parking where the car is shown on the left-hand side of the image. In this view, we're up at the north end of the site. So we're standing on the promenade, sort of with our backs towards Albert Campbell Square, looking south towards Borough Drive. This is over the parking entrance. We're looking down that promenade, and it kind of meanders amongst new landscape and trees as a kind of heavily landscaped west edge of the site. Here we are, we've moved around to the east side of the site to the north. So we're standing really with our back to Town Center Court, and we're looking across what I described earlier as that Woonerf, that pedestrianized street that will be used just for some daycare drop-offs, some service vehicles, but largely a pedestrian space throughout the entire day. On the left are amenity spaces. A little farther along where you see the arcade of columns is the daycare drop-off. And you can see that low two-story wall I was speaking about at the beginning, and the wall of the parking garage on the right-hand side, the existing parking garage. Here's a view standing actually in Albert Campbell Square. You can see the amphitheater right in the center of the image, and you see our proposed buildings with the space between them just to the back of the image. So here we have a kind of plan view of the design. You see Borough Drive across the bottom, Town Center Court on the right-hand side on the east, the promenade on the west side. And you see within the design, with two towers, there are two separate lobbies, one for each tower, one off Town Center Court, the other at the intersection of Borough Drive and the forecourt. And you can also see from the north where it says childcare drop-off, a place for parents to drop off and pick up. And you can see the daycare center that runs right through the site and across to the east corner. And it really opens out to that protected courtyard and is the west side on the north west corner. You can see amenity, that's amenity for the residents of the towers on the north west, but also on the northeast. I think the next sequence of slides will really look at the landscape that really unifies the sites. And it's really four main components. At the top of the two buildings is the Woonerf with the curvilinear paving and landscaping. On the left-hand side, the west, the promenade connecting with accessibility up to Albert Campbell Square, the Woodland Court in the center, and the Borough Drive streetscape along Borough Drive, which you can see is narrowed in its lane widths. This is a plan that looks more closely at that streetscape, and it will be a very significant change. It's really, it's a replanning of the right-of-way on Borough Drive. It accommodates much wider sidewalks. It accommodates much better street trees. It accommodates a dedicated cycling path, as you can see. And the intent is to really create a great new streetscape, not just for this project, but for the whole Civic Center precinct. In this drawing, which is a cross-section, you can see a little more carefully drawn the woodlot on the left, our site, on the right, I should say, our site on the left. And you can see the double row of trees immediately on the north side, on the left side. You can see the cycling path, and you can see 2 lanes of moving traffic and 1 parking lane on the south side, and again, the sidewalk against the woodlot. The next major element of the landscape is that woodland court that's north of the Borough Drive improvements. It's got two main areas. One is the play space for children from the childcare center. It's south-facing open space, which is open to the public. And that space has tall grasses, it has shade, it has a playful fence integrated to protect the kids, structured play area. It's a kind of naturalistic and beautifully planted area, we hope. On the north side, the Woonerf really enhances pedestrian connectivity across the north edge of the site. It really provides just intermittent service access for drop-off and pickup and daycare, and it'll have benches and plantings, as you can see, decorative paving. And finally, the promenade is really a major accessible pedestrian connection from Borough Drive to the square. The same decorative paving is planned, as you can see, together with permanent seating and seasonal planting, and you can see the kinds of plant materials and landscape materials in the photo images that will be part of the design of this accessible promenade. I think this is an important view that really shows the Borough Drive streetscape, the bicycle lane, the expanded sidewalk widths, the improved tree planting and the understory planting, the setbacks to the building, and you can see the courtyard beyond between the two buildings. So it's really a kind of very naturalistic landscape, which really makes a much enhanced public realm. Here we are on the south side of Borough Drive, looking north along that promenade to the square. And you can see the west entrance has really been designed to be open and transparent and accessible. The west apartment entrance accessible from the sidewalk. So very welcoming and very connected and really enjoying and contributing to the kind of mature landscape. And you can see the landscape and the children's play area in the court beyond to the right. Just a couple of more views. This is with our backs to the west, looking across the Civic Center forecourt towards the west face of our building. The low two-story wall that connects the building precinct together. You can see the slope of Borough Drive on the right and leading up to Albert's Campbell Square on the left. We've tucked in access for parking and in a very discrete landscape condition on the left-hand side of the image. And so significant improvements in the forecourt area as well. And finally, the north edge, the Woonerf, looking to the west, the existing buildings on the right-hand side of the image with heavy planting along that edge. The Civic Center is just visible at the end in the distance. The amenity spaces are behind the big double-story windows on the left. The daycare center is in the open loggia or columns. And so very much a project which is surrounded by a kind of very developed and careful landscape on all four sides. Thanks very much and look forward to your comments and advice.
Thanks so much, Don. So as mentioned, we are early in the, sorry, the next slide, please. We are early in the consultation process and we'll be taking feedback received tonight up until May 7th. We will utilize this feedback to review and update the preliminary concept plans in advance of a second community consultation meeting that's targeted for this summer. We expect our final development applications to be considered by City Council in the fall or winter of this year, followed by a market offering where we will select a preferred development partner. Once the development partner has been selected, we will then advance detailed design and construction drawings that will, or they will rather, advance detailed design and construction drawings in consultation with us that will be reviewed and approved by the city. At this time, we expect construction to start in the spring of 2024 and extend for 2 years, with first occupancy targeted in 2026. Before we open the floor to questions, I wanted to highlight some of the themes in the written feedback that we have received so far. This includes interest in enhancing recreational space and facilities, as well as improved stormwater management. Some concerns have also been expressed regarding property values and community safety, strain on local infrastructure, and external impacts, including privacy, overlook, and shadows. More broadly, an interest has been expressed in adding shuttle bus services until the Scarborough subway extension is complete. Before I turn it back to Ian, I will start off by stating that the proposal is intended to establish a high quality of design that will deliver significant improvements to the public realm. ATO will evaluate and select an experienced development partner that will be responsible for designing, constructing, operating, and maintaining a high quality project that delivers significant value to the community and the city at large. Technical and design considerations, including stormwater management, tower separation distances, and shadow impact, will be evaluated by the city through technical drawings and reports submitted as part of complete development applications. We look forward to engaging with you over the next year to achieve a high quality project that will become a new landmark at Scarborough Centre.
Great, thank you, everyone. I'm going to suggest that we stop sharing right now and turn the floor over to Councillor Thompson. The councillor arrived earlier on in the meeting, and we'd like to make sure that we give the councillor some time to say any opening remarks. So, Councillor Thompson, over to you.
Thank you, and Ian, and good evening, everyone, and thank you to the members of the community who have come out to hear about this particular development at 158 Borough Drive. This is also my first time really seeing this. This is not a planning application that has had guidance from myself or the community, and obviously that's the reason why the staff are here, to show the community what they have been thinking about. This is part of the city's objective with respect to housing now, and to provide some 40,000 new affordable housing for residents in the city of Toronto. We know that that's needed, but we also have to be very clear with respect to what the direct impact will be to our community. I'd like to thank Mr. Schmidt for his presentation. His firm is a great firm in the city of Toronto. They do excellent work, but there are questions that I do have, because the speaker before just indicated that, you know, that this process is going to go forward in completion in 2026 and so on. You talked about the second consultation process, which will be in the summer. But then you also went on to say that, you know, the property will be developed with obviously the responsible partner for design and development. It would sort of seem inconsistent with respect to what's being presented here today. So my question, firstly, and you can answer that a little bit later, whether or not what is being proposed is actually what will be built because of the comments that were made. I want to say to the residents, prior to my taking over this portion of the ward, the former councillor, Glenn de Bearmaker, had been in discussion with the developer about the acquisition of this particular site. That information was conveyed to me because there was plans to develop a condominium in conjunction to the other developments that's taken place in the area. Apparently, the deal had not been consummated, as was discussed with myself. The city's Housing Now policy requires a city to use its own lands for development. That has obviously implication to the community, but it's really important to understand. I think that this community will have and should have further say with respect to what's going to happen here. I know some people have asked me whether or not we could stop this development. It is not possible to stop the development, but I think that based on the presentation here this evening, it is very possible to be engaged and to be involved and provide your input with respect to your concern and what you'd like to see here. There are many things that I think that as members of the community we would like to see in our community, as well as having a voice with respect to what happens in the community. One of the concerns that I've heard from, amongst the many I've heard from residents, was, is this going to be Ontario housing? Is this going to be low cost housing and so on? And I think that based on the presentation, you'll see and are making good wages, however, not able to come up with the down payment and so on. And
Councillor,
a resident group, just give me another moment, please.
No, it's just your audio is choppy.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry. Rather sketchy all day today.
I think
what I'd like to say is that we establish a residential group so that we can work together in conjunction with respect to the planning staff of the city and the housing now, as part of the opportunity to provide the residents with greater input with respect to what's going to take place in their community. I'll rest for now and listen to what the residents' comments and to listen to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. And your audio was clear for 85% of that. It was just the last couple of minutes, or last couple seconds anyway. So I think we got the vast majority of it for sure. So thank you for that. So I'm going to say a quick few words about mechanics in terms of how the discussion is going to work, and then I'll even start. We already got a question from the councillor about is what is being proposed here, what is actually being built. So we might even start with that one, and then we'll go down the list of others from the community that have either questions or comments. So before I do that, just a few mechanical questions, or not questions, just things to let you know. So we are recording the meeting. If you're in your app and you see that little recording button, that's because the team is recording the meeting and we'll be posting that on the Create TO website afterwards. So if you entered a little bit late or missed part of the presentation and you'd like to watch it, you will have the chance to do that there. They are also going to post the presentation on the website, and we'll let you know the URL for that website, but that will be up in the next day as well. So again, if you missed anything or you prefer to go through it on your own time and at your own pace, you'll be able to do that as well. So those are a few things just in terms of how you can get additional information. We are going to work very hard to get to as many questions and comments as possible before 8:30. If we do not get to your specific question or comment in the next hour and 10 minutes, or if you need a little bit more time to think about it, you can still share additional feedback up to and including May 7th. So I just want everybody to know that the next hour and 10 minutes is not the only opportunity to share your input. And to the councillor's point, to have your say on this, there is more time still, and we'll let you know the contact information on who you can share that information with closer to the end of the meeting. So I just want to let you know those few broader process things. So what I'm going to do now is everyone who has joined us from the community, and I see a bit over almost 80 people, I'm going to now make you panelists in WebEx, which you don't need to worry about what that means. Other than that, it will give you the chance to turn on your camera if you would like and unmute yourself if you would like. So we are not going to manage anybody's camera or mic for them. It's totally up to you if you want to turn your camera on. We appreciate it always because it makes these virtual meetings feel a little bit more human, but if you want to leave it off, please obviously leave it off. And we won't manage anyone's mic unless they're really having a tough time or there's some very loud background noise. For the folks on the phone, you won't obviously be able to turn on a camera, but we will be paying close attention to the people on the phone. And if you are on the phone and you want to raise your hand, once we get in a minute when we get to the discussion, you just press *3 on your phone. So I'll remind everybody of that a few times throughout the meeting, but if you're on the phone and you press *3, that will let us know that you have a question or comment, and we'll get to you in turn. Everybody else, you can either, if your camera's on, you can wave at us, or depending on whether you're on a smartphone or a tablet or a web app, it's going to look slightly different, but you'll either see a small hand icon or some text that says raise hand. So any of those work. We'll be paying attention to all those many different ways that you can get our attention. So with that said, I'm now going to make everyone a panelist, and that takes usually a couple of seconds to do that. And so while that's happening, I'll just ask everyone to be patient for a second. So good. So I think we've got everybody that can be is. I'll just remind you again and I see a hand up already, 2 hands up already, which is good. But before we go to them, maybe I'll start with the councillor's question, which is what is being proposed here, what is being built? And so I'll turn that over to Annalie from City Planning and others if they want to chime in.
Thanks. And I think the Deputy Mayor really hit on a key issue, which is that all over the city, we see beautiful renderings of future developments, and we want to know, will that actually be what is built? So I think that was really a great way to start. The way Housing Now works is that we are very aware that the time and costs related to obtaining development approvals is something that if we as the city can take on, it enables affordable housing to be built much more quickly. And so what that means is that we do have to come up with a development concept, the likes of which Don Schmidt presented tonight. So how do we carry that line through a developer partner joining and making a proposal for a new development? We create something that is called a design brief. And that really is a set of expectations that when we go to market with this project, we provide very clearly to the development community to say, this is our expectation for what will be delivered at this site. This is the type of treatment for the landscape and for the building that we would expect to see, and it becomes part of the contract. So it's not going to be absolutely identical, but key part of Housing Now is to meet the mayor's requirement for high quality design for city-owned buildings or buildings on city-owned sites. So I just wanted to hopefully provide some clarity about that there will be an expectation that the future developer carries through key pieces of what you saw today. And then, of course, we are going to be out again at that stage when the developer has the opportunity to put forward the application for site plan, which is really the final step of approvals before construction. And that's when the community can provide feedback on things like the planting materials and the materials on the building as you see fit.
Great. Thanks for that, Annalie. So right before we get to the first set of questions, I'm just going to ask Matthew to put the discussion questions on screen one last time for those that have joined, and then we will not share the screen again until the end of the meeting so that we can spend most of our time seeing and hearing from you. But just to review, the specific questions that we had were if there were any strategies that you would like to see explored to improve connections from Borough Drive and Town Center Core to Albert Campbell Square and other local destinations. And if you have any ideas you would like to see explored to enhance the pedestrian experience on Borough Drive, and what are they? And if you have any other comments. So I just wanted to, I did say we would share those one more time. So thank you, Matthew. We can stop sharing and I'll go to the hand that has been up first, which was from Anna. So Anna, I'm just gonna, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can either share your question or your feedback.
Hi there.
Hi.
Great, perfect. So thank you for all in three getting together and for discussing this with us. I just like the idea of being able to share my opinion on this new development. So I live in one of the condos right behind your new proposed development, and I live relatively close to the main floor. And to be perfectly honest, this new development has me a bit worried, just because the last one that happened with Albert Campbell Square, you guys put a park basically right outside of my window. And as much fun as playgrounds are for kids, they're not great for adults all the time. And you know, especially during COVID, there's a worry with that. And you know, these types of developments, especially with children care, like it's great to obviously look after children, but you know, they can be noisy, they can be messy. And recently, especially with the park, they're attracting a relatively destructive crowd, especially towards those green spaces that you're talking about and the ones that you propose to add in. We see, you know, at nighttime, we see a lot of teenagers come around with baseball bats and stomping on the fields and that kind of stuff. So, you know, putting in green spaces is obviously a great addition, but you know, there needs to be an equal level of respect coming from the people who are using the green space. And there's no way to really police that. And nor should you really, because it's a public space. So that's obviously a worry. And then you also mentioned that, you know, it'll be a great addition to the walkways and the parkways and the subway. But as anyone who lives in the area knows, the line 3 does not work very well. It's basically being held together right now with duct tape. And they're proposing putting in shuttle buses. And realistically, the new Eglinton line probably won't reach STC until, probably another 5 to 10 years. So it's just really, I'm just really worried that this whole development is really just going to add to, congestion, noise, and, just overcrowding in the area. So, if the development works in a way that kind of supports a positive community engagement and the positive aspects of the community, then great. But if it's just going to add more frustrations to the community around and, the people who are already living here, it's definitely a cause for concern.
Okay, thanks for that, Anna. I'm just gonna, I think Kelly, the local planner, is probably the best person to respond to your questions, to synthesize those really, or both questions and concerns about local infrastructure, whether that's the transit infrastructure or the parks, and how the city is thinking about the kind of stresses on that infrastructure, potential stresses as a result of this. So Kelly, over to you, and then we'll go to the next couple of people.
Great, thanks for your feedback, Anna. There's a few things to touch on. I will start with probably your last point, which related to overcrowding on the SRT, which we are very well aware of. As you know, there is a extension to Line 2 coming to Scarborough Centre and beyond, and that will hopefully help alleviate that congestion, but it's not going to be open until 2030. So what do we do in the interim? Especially with the SRT being decommissioned in a couple of years. So we don't have all the answers for you right now, but what we can tell you is that TTC is working with the rest of the city to come up with some long-term options to move people to and from Scarborough Centre and beyond in the most efficient way possible. So I will have to say that you will have to stay tuned for the specifics of that plan, but it's something that is first and foremost, because we do want to keep moving people through the city as efficiently as possible and as safely. With respect to some of your other questions, as part of a development application, including this development concept, we do ask for a variety of studies to support the development application. And those include noise and vibration studies, they include traffic impact studies, and city staff review those studies quite closely, sometimes asking for multiple revisions until we can get it right and make sure that the impacts are going to be minimized, and disruption to the local residents that are already there are again going to be minimized. So I hope that answers all of your questions. If there's a follow-up, please let me know.
And then I'm just gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna move on to some other folks, but if I'll check with you first to see if you're okay with that, and then I'll go on to some others, and then if we can come back to you again. I just want to try to get to as many as possible.
Yeah, as long as the noise level and the community destruction level is being assessed properly, then that would be great.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Anna.
Ian, I could just maybe add very briefly that we looked at a number of options for the daycare play space. We looked at it fronting to the north and fronting to the south, and where we ultimately are proposing it for in what you've seen this evening is the daycare space facing to the south, so really away from Anna, from the apartment and the condominiums that you're in. And it was a number of reasons, but one of them was to really focus noise away from the existing residents.
Thanks for that addition, Don. So the next person I've got on the list is Corey. And so Corey, I'll just, if you just want to unmute yourself and ask your question or share your feedback.
Hi, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you, first of all, for hosting this community consultation. We've been living in this neighborhood for about 3 years now, and in Scarborough for around 10. We did a bit of homework before coming to this meeting, and we found there's a few different sort of policy proposals around Scarborough Town Centre, and more specifically the Civic Centre. In particular, there's a 2012 Public Space and Streetscape Master Plan, as well as a 2019 Scarborough Centre Focus Review. And they sort of have some pretty clear recommendations for this site, especially because of its proximity to the Civic Centre. One of the things they say is that the building height should step away from the Civic Centre to reinforce the symbolic importance. And additionally, tall buildings will contribute to the overall image of the center, They should be located in a suitable manner to minimize shadow in the public realm and reduce visual impact on the silhouette of the Civic Center building. It seems pretty clear that a 37-story tower and a 27-story tower are both sort of in direct conflict with both of these planning proposals. And I'm just wondering why the decision has been made to sort of contravene all of the existing, planning documents and recommendations.
Okay, thanks, Corey. So I think that's more for city planning. So I'll start with Annalee and then Kelly, if there's local context as well to bring to how the city has considered some of the previous planning work, including that streetscape master plan from 2012 and the focus review in 2019.
Sure, and thanks, Corey, for that question. It's so impressive that you did some homework on this site. I appreciate it. I think the policies that you're referring to, they are matters for interpretation, of course. From our perspective, we've been very clear on certain factors that we want to keep the Albert Campbell Square out of shadow, and we want to maintain that view of the building is protected. We know that this site has always been, if future development would occur here, a tall building site. So the question is, how do you design tall buildings in a manner that addresses that work that Kelly will speak to in a moment? And how do you do so also in a manner that addresses the fact that we do have this affordability crisis in the city? I think what you've seen today is a very generous public realm that really seeks to encircle the whole building portion in a very, very generous landscape context and support the future mobility for bikes in the area and pedestrians to get from Ellesmere up to the square. From that, I'm going to pass it over to Kelly, who can speak to how we deal with ongoing development where we have planning frameworks in place and in process.
Great, thanks, Annalee, and thanks, Corey, for your questions. You're correct in that there have been a number of previous studies undertaken for Scarborough Centre, including the Public Space and Streetscape Master Plan amongst many others. And the objective of the current study, the Our Scarborough Civic Centre study, is actually to look at all of those studies and consolidate them into one very strong, succinct plan that will guide future development in Scarborough Centre, coming up with strategies to help guide the vision of how everybody wants to see Scarborough Centre develop. And as Annalee alluded to, some of the, I guess, comments in some of those studies are up for interpretation in the sense that they have given a variety of direction for how projects in Scarborough Centre are going to evolve over time. And we're trying to take all of those into consideration when we consider this development application, as well as all the others in Scarborough Centre.
Thanks, Corey. I'm just going to go to the next person, but if you want to lower your hand, Corey, just so that if it comes back up, I know to go back to you, that would be great. So thank you for that. So I'm going to go next to Jamal. Jamal, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I have a few comments. I really like the groundscaping of the area. I like the bikes. I like the addition of green space and trees. And I like the fact that they put in the attention to detail about making sure there aren't shadows on Albert Campbell Square. I also think this is really important for the community in terms of making sure that there's a mix of housing, in terms of making sure that about half the units are affordable. And I really like the fact that there's a daycare. My one comment, and it's kind of a big comment, is I don't particularly like the design of the building itself. I mean, if we're building a new Scarborough downtown, and this is supposed to be our front door to the world, and we're building this new $6 billion subway to service it, I mean, just looking at that building could be basically anywhere. And I think there should be more thought into branding this as a downtown Scarborough building, whatever that might be. But, you know, there's an image in your head when you say downtown Brooklyn, you kind of know what the buildings look like. Same with downtown Toronto. This building could be anywhere in Scarborough. So I think it needs to really be elevated, and I think it needs a serious rethink in terms of what you're trying to do for downtown Scarborough. Otherwise, I support the project. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamal. And I don't know, Nima or Don, if you want to just take that as advice, or if there's any response you wanted to share.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so as Annalie previously mentioned, as part of our current process, we will be preparing a design brief. It's not the final approved design. When we bring our selected development partner on board, they will be going through a much more detailed process called site plan approval. That's where specific design elements like materiality, the final layout, some of the finer architectural details will be developed. So the purpose of, I guess, the meeting tonight and the initial process really is to set the broad design parameters, some of the bigger kind of key elements that we would like to secure. And then once we do select a development partner, we will be working closely with them on the final approved design, including some of those elements that you referred to, and really getting perhaps a Scarborough character within the proposal.
I might just add a few comments, Jamal. Thanks for the input, and I think you'll notice in the presentation this evening that we had great colored renderings of all the landscape and those elements. We've really represented the building in black and white, and because in a sense the design is not cooked yet, we really wanted to have this meeting. We wanted to kind of hear input. There's no doubt there's a kind of real character to the Civic Center, the kind of geometry, the kind of white cladding. You know, there's some real clues that we need to kind of develop. What we've been working on is trying to get the bones and all the pieces in the right place. And then we're going to kind of refine the architecture. But I appreciate your comments, and I assure you we'll work hard at it. Thanks.
Thanks. And I think that line of thinking in terms of making it fit with the Scarborough Civic Center is exactly the right track.
Yeah.
In terms of like making that character of the overall feel of the neighborhood.
Good. Okay, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Jamal. And I'm just, if you don't mind lowering your hand, Jamal, when you've got a sec, again, just so I know if it comes back up to go back to you. So next, I'm just going to keep going down our list, and I'll remind anyone that's joined by the phone to use *3 to put your hand up. I don't see any other any phone people with hands up at the moment, and which is fine, but if you want to, *3 is how you do it. Next person is Jenny.
Hi, thank you for holding this meeting. So I do want to say I'm excited by the green space. I do acknowledge that we do need housing in the city. I am a resident in those Monarch buildings, so I don't want to sound like I'm opposed to housing, and I love the daycare. You know, I do want to be, how should I put this? So in the last slide, it was acknowledged that there were some concerns about, say, shadows upon the other existing buildings, property value and such like that. When I talk to my neighbors, because we never really get a clear answer as to how this actually would impact us, we've sort of allowed this to kind of go into speculation. And often when you talk about speculations, you would hear things like, oh my God, my property value is going to go to like the bottom, you know, or I'll never see the sun again, like, you know, that kind of thing. I would really like to hear more about that issue being addressed more directly. You know, I live a little bit higher up, you know, and, you know, I enjoy the view, but you know, in talking to my husband, we're more than willing to give up the view if it's to help the city. But I want to know what we're giving up exactly, you know, for lack of a better way of explaining it. Like, you know, I know it's terrible to say giving up, right? But I rather we have a really honest conversation about, hey, we're building a building next to you. These are the things that will change about your living kind of arrangement. And so that way we're not walking into this with assumptions whether they're good or bad. But I also don't want to put a kibosh on this either. Because I mean, it's a really nice design, and we really enjoy the green space and the bike lanes and everything like that. But I think there's a lot of fear and speculations that are happening.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. I think I'll suggest starting with Annalie and then Dawn if there's anything else to add to Annalie's.
Jenny, thank you for that. You know, Scarborough Center is really becoming a tall building community. So being very aware of that, we were very conscious to make sure that our architects were very mindful of the spacing and the location of the towers, and Don will speak more specifically to that, and I know he referenced it in his presentation. With respect to property values, you know, this is going to replace a vacant parking lot that was used for city staff. And what you'll have is a landscape space for access by the broader community. And also, we know that when we go out for Housing Now projects to the market, we're seeking experienced developers who have a proven track record in developing high quality buildings that can be well managed. So, you know, that's not a specific answer in terms of a dollar impact on your property values, but what you're going to see here is a well managed building by an experienced developer. I can turn it over to Dawn if you want to speak more about how you design the spacing between the towers.
Sure. Thanks, Annalie, and thanks, Jenny. Just a couple of comments. One thing that is good about this process of really, in a sense, between Create.to and the planning department and Housing Now, the city is the client in a sense, and can really define the expectations about quality and can define the expectations of the kind of delivery that they expect. And I think, you know, you heard about the design excellence or design expectations document that will really spell out the quality that's expected of landscape, of cladding, of design, that the kind of elements of the overall design of all the elements, not only through the rezoning process, but through the design expectations process, can really sort of bake in quality, if you will, into the project. So I think that's one aspect of a process that I think will be helpful. The second thing I would say, the second thing I would just add is that we positioned the buildings so that there are over 40 meters, about 130, 140 feet between the two buildings, the two proposed buildings. That'll facilitate views from the Monarch buildings. We're significantly set back from the existing Monarch buildings, much wider than street widths at its narrowest. And so we've taken care to kind of position the building so there's good sight lines, lots of natural light, mitigating any shadow impacts on Albert Campbell Square. We think that's working, but we need to do a few more studies to confirm that all the kind of, you know, the result is what the expectations are. But we hear your point, and we'll work hard at ensuring that.
Thanks. I think, Jenny, see your hand going down. So I'm just going to go to the next person, which is Abigail. So Abigail, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I just wanted to say firstly, thanks so much for hosting this session and for hearing out what the residents have to say about this new proposal. I just wanted to list my personal reasons as to how this is going to impact me. Firstly, I own my unit. I just bought it, so I paid like a hefty premium, and it's not easy for me to just relocate in the event of a construction because like I suffer with migraines. I'm a chronic migraine sufferer. So I just think I have anxiety now to have to live through a construction being a migraine sufferer. And as well as I suffer with depression, millennial problems. And one of my coping mechanisms are using the unobstructed views of nature. I could see the lake, I could see downtown, I could see the lights at night. So just like my personal mental health is going to be adversely impacted. Also, my unit is going to be directly facing the 27-story tower. So I work in my den, I work from home, and I just think that the now my view is going to be blocked off. I'm going to be looking into another person's unit, and I just feel like it's going to be super close, and I'm going to feel boxed in as well as my other neighbors. And while I know the whole development was considered to try to still allow for views, I am going to be completely blocked off directly. And so those are just my personal reasons as to possibly not having it directly on this car park. And additionally, this community is currently a very quiet, safe community, and a bunch of us have concerns by introducing mixed income housing, like if it's going to potentially lead to increased noise, increased social activity, and other problems that may exist with lower income housing. And my one question for you all, is it possible at all for any other land space to be considered for this housing complex that is like in close proximity? For example, like if you drive over McCowan onto Grangeway, we have 2 car parks there that is currently servicing for RT commuters. Is it possible for one of those spots to be used? That way, it is still far away from a lot of housing, so the construction, noise, air pollution during the construction could be limited. And also, it still is close enough that it's walking distance to the RT, walking distance to Scarborough Town Center, groceries, everything. So I really think and hope that other locations within proximity could be considered, because this one is personally adversely affecting me and my mental health. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abigail. So there's a few things there. I think that maybe we can start with the last one first, which is about the site selection. And Annalie, I think that might be good to start with you in terms of that other sites in your McCowan or Grangeway, and if those are possibilities. And then I think some of the other concerns you shared, Abigail, we've heard a little bit about before, construction and views and noise. So we might, Nima, be able to speak a little bit about construction plans, and then we can move on from there. So Annalie, I'll start with you.
Thanks, and we definitely hear you on a lot of those points. I mean, this site was selected and approved by City Council because it is a parking lot in proximity to transit, and it will help to complete the vision for Scarborough Centre in terms of the landscape along Borough Drive and filling in a vacant property that has always been expected to be a future development site. So when we review these sites for recommendation to council, we do consider things like the appropriateness of the site for a tall building development. And I can speak to the fact that we are aware that when a building is constructed, there is a period of time when there's a construction noise and issues. So part of the requirement for a future developer is to provide a construction management plan, and they will also be required to adhere to the city's bylaws related to construction noise, dust, operating hours, etc.
Thanks, Annalie. And Nima, anything else to add in terms of the construction? I think Annalie covered most of it, but if there's anything else.
Yeah, I think, the noise, dust, vibration, other related impacts from construction, they will be addressed with the construction management plan. And again, it's our intention to select a reputable development partner, and we'll work closely with them to ensure that all the city standards are maintained and that a robust construction management plan is submitted as part of the approvals process.
Okay. So, and I think I know, Abigail, you also shared some concerns about views, and I know we'd heard some of that from previous people as well. So I think we'll add that to the as part of our feedback summary. I think that's emerging as one of the topics that several people are concerned about. So we're going to make sure to make a note of that. I will go to the next person just to try to get as many different voices in as possible. But if there's time and you have more, we'll come back to you as well. So the next person on the I've got is Nicole. Nicole, if you'd like to unmute yourself. Hi, Nicole. I'm not getting any audio. I don't know if anybody else is. No.
No.
Okay, Nicole, there might be an issue with your connection. I'll try to come back to you again in a minute. In the worst case scenario, we will make sure that you are aware of other ways to share feedback afterwards. So if the technology doesn't hold up, then we definitely don't want to lose the opportunity to hear your question or feedback. But I will come back to you. But just in the interest of going to someone else, I'll go to Ray next. I'm just going to go to people we haven't heard from yet, and then I'll come back to people who have already had a chance. Ray.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for setting up this consultation session for this new building. I want to bring attention to the committee about the air pollution problem in this area before we build to have a new building, bring in more residents, and have child care. Please do more environmental study about this Scarborough Town Center area, and particularly for the industry area west of the Brimley. In summer evening, there are very bad odor and the smells coming from the paper mills and the plastic packaging company. It's not very strong in the daytime, but in summer evening, it's very horrible. So before you bring in more residents to these neighborhoods, please address this issue. Otherwise, there will be more other issues coming. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Maybe Kelly, sounds like a local planning issue. Do you have any, I guess, insight you can reveal in terms of how the city is thinking about some of the air quality or bad odors that might be coming from paper mills or nearby on Brimley?
Sure, thank you. And thanks, Ray, for your question. It's a comment that we have heard from many local residents in the area over many years. Atlantic Packaging, like any big employer that runs a paper recycling company, or I believe there's Mondelez who manufactures food products, they are all required to adhere to ministry standards and obtain a certificate in order to keep operating. And over the years, sometimes due to just the way the air is blowing, sometimes we have greater smells than others, but they are regulated. And as part of any development application within a certain radius, typically 500 meters, we do ask that they undertake appropriate environmental studies to investigate whether or not there would be any air quality impact issues, not only from the industry on the development, because we want to make sure that the uses are compatible with one another.
Okay, thanks, Kelly.
Add to that as well, Ian.
Yes, of course, Councillor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have been working with Atlantic and others in the area, and Ray is right. There are times when there are odors. We have also worked with the Minister of Environment, as Kelly has pointed out. The certificate is issued by the ministry and not the City of Toronto. What has become clear to us, though, is that in the community, the what is either some people call it smoke. There is a plume of gray cloud that comes from the facility. It has been determined and deemed by the ministry that it is not hazardous in the traditional sense of it, where some would say, is it cancerous and other types of concerns. There are a series of things that we have worked with the industry in the area to put in place, such as scrubbers and a variety of other things. It's ongoing. There is a number, for example, where residents can actually call in when they detect an odor, or to call my office, and we do respond to it. So just wanted to put that out there. And it's a work in progress. And Kelly is right, just because of the way that the industry is allowed to operate on the west portion, but there is actually ongoing activities taking place there.
Thank you. And maybe
to mitigate.
And maybe what we can do, Deputy Mayor Thompson, is coordinate with your office to see if we can put that phone number right into the meeting summary here, just so Ray may not be the only person interested in knowing that information, so we can do that afterwards. So thank you for that, Ray. So I'm going to go to a couple of folks who, I'm going to try Nicole again, just in case you're reconnected to your audio. Nicole, I've just unmuted you. Okay, still not hearing you, Nicole. So we'll go to the next, but I will share more details on how you can share your feedback after. And just so everybody knows, all the post-meeting feedback that we hear, we also put in the summary, so that if Nicole is able to connect with us separately afterwards, you'll all be able to see the feedback that she shared as well. So just want to let you know that. So next I'll go to Suman. Suman, please, if you have a question or a comment.
Hi, this is Suman here. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak about this development, and thank you for sharing the plan. It was much clearer what it's going to come. However, I wanted to be a little bit transparent over here that I'm directly opposing on this development, especially of 37 stories and 27 stories, which is coming up around 600 units or families living over here. It's not going to be a good development on this neighbor. I would really ask one of all the panelists who are here, who are sitting as on the side of the council, that have you guys come and seen in the evening or at times that how the streets are so crowded, and crowded in the sense when one car is parked on one side of the lane, the other car they can drive. Now, with this 3 or 4 buildings on this town center core, Borough Drive is having this issue. Now, if you're bringing 600 families, at least with 300 cars being traveling in this street, is going to make very crowd, noise, pollution. Now, planting trees or whatever that's been happening, and that alone is not going to solve the problem, because the space what you are taking and building it for 600 units is much more than the plants or trees what you're going to plant it and save the environment. So it's directly a not acceptable thing, and it is just that to build this development, to build this building, that statement or things has been placed. So that is one. Second, many of my other people, like the neighbors who have been talking about the noise. It's not about the noise during the construction alone. The construction is just going to be 5 to 7 years or whatever. It is after that, when number of people come into and start living over here, the noise, how it will be there. That is the noise that they are talking about. And right now, the neighborhood is very silent. It's clean. It's good. There is no accidents or any criminal activities. Nothing is happening. It's not only the condos, it's even the neighborhood opposite, other side of the Ellesmere. There's no issues happening. Nothing is being shown in CP24 that this is happening in this intersection or something like that. So it is that clean, good neighborhood. You're trying to satisfy something where in the city that you don't have the houses, but you're killing the other good things what is there in this neighborhood. And the fourth thing, which I spoke about, the crowd, noise, and traffic. And I also see that, yes, the empty land is sitting, which is not being used, popularized, when the city itself is getting developed so huge, where you could come up with a smaller, less number of units, and or can come up with the daycare or offices where after the business hours that the neighborhood, it still almost remains the same. It's instead of just bringing the 600 units being built in that small area is not something good for the people living. And the other thing is in those condos or houses over there, this is not an investment properties. There are, for so many people, it is their first home and forever home. There are so many seniors being living in these buildings as well as on the other side of the neighborhood. So I don't know what we are trying to achieve here. Are we going to say that we are going to satisfy the issue of housing market, and then you're spoiling the other things? The neighbors who spoke right before that, they were so good and polite, and they just directly said, it's the health, it's this and that, and so on thing. But I just don't want it to be like that. It's directly impacting me and my family, and I'm not happy at all. I'm sorry if it was not something in a proper manner, but I'm just being transparent.
No, Suma's perfect. I was just, I'll turn it over to Annalie now. Sorry, Annalie, go ahead.
Okay, Suman, I don't know if you saw the whole presentation that we presented tonight, but what we tried to do is really illustrate the type of rents that these units are for. They're for people who might also be living in the building that you live in. If you live in one of the condos, they might be early childhood educators, nurses, construction workers, people who make this city work. And these people are struggling with housing affordability issues, and they're able to pay rent. As Deputy Mayor said, sometimes the challenge around owning is about the down payment. And so our perspective here is that this is really not killing something that's good in the neighborhood, but that actually rounds out the neighborhood beautifully, in that it provides housing that can support a broader population, provides opportunity for childcare, and of course, a beautiful area around the outside of the development. Just with respect to noise, you know, we're building a building that is much like a condo building that exists on Town Center Court today. People will have windows and they'll have balconies. And that's the kind of noise that comes from them. So if, you know, you're talking about being out at night on the summer's night and you hear people having dinner with their friends or playing with their children on their balcony, that's the kind of noise that we expect to hear. It's a residential building with a daycare at grade. And so I really just want to emphasize that we're building a residential building, the likes of which is seen all over the city of Toronto. We've heard from Jamal, he wants it to be even more of a landmark building, so we'll take that under consideration. But we're really looking at a good quality residential building to support the people of Toronto.
And I did, Suman, we did take lots of detailed notes because you did share quite a few concerns there about noise and crowding and traffic. So I do want to make sure that those are noted as part of what we've heard here as well. I see about 20 minutes left before we start to wrap, and I've got about 4 or 5 hands up from folks that we haven't heard from yet. So I'm going to, to the degree possible, ask the remaining people if you can try to keep your question or comment to 2 or 3 minutes max, or maybe 2 minutes max, so that we can try to get to as many as possible. And same for the panelists to keep the answers to 2 or 3 minutes, so that we can get to as many of these people before we wrap. And I'm going to continue to prioritize people that we haven't heard from yet. So there's someone on the phone. So I'm going to start there, and then we'll keep going. So I've unmuted the person on the phone. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, I'm actually Nicole. I'm just calling on the phone.
Oh, perfect.
It's not working. Yeah. So I actually have an issue with the parking because it doesn't seem like you guys put that into consideration.
You mean replacing the existing parking or the parking?
Right now, like the federal building, I mean, it's because of pandemic. There's not a lot of cars right now. But when pre-pandemic, there are 2 green parking near the Fresco area and where the McCowan RT is. The federal building, all the employees have to park over there. They're all paid parking, and because there's no space. And even their own federal building isn't able to incorporate that many employees to work there and to park there. Now with the city parking gone, where is the city staff going to park?
Okay, good. So thank you, Nicole. I'm glad you were able to join on the phone. I'll start with Nima and then Kelly. How are you thinking about replacing the parking or supplementing the parking for staff, given that this is going to replace a staff parking lot?
So thanks again for your question, Nicole. With respect to staff replacement parking, that is something we are considering. We will be looking at a variety of options. That includes both on-site replacement parking, so potentially in the form of a Green P commercial lot within the proposal, and potentially some off-site parking solutions. So it's still early days in terms of consideration for staff replacement parking. With respect to the actual residential component, there is parking proposed currently at 300 stalls. We will be preparing a detailed parking and traffic study, which will be submitted as part of and reviewed by the city as part of our complete development applications. And the city will assess the appropriateness of replacement parking as part of that study.
Thanks, Nima. Kelly, anything to further add on parking?
I think Nima pretty much covered most of it off. We have asked for a traffic impact assessment and a parking assessment to be submitted that will be reviewed by engineers at the city and commented on.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So I'm going to go next to Ryan. Ryan, go ahead.
Hello, thanks for taking my question this evening, much appreciated. I'm Ryan, I'm actually a City of Toronto firefighter and I've been a long-term resident of the area. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Annalee referred to people who make this city run, so I would consider myself in that category. And I would like to officially state for the record that I am opposed to this development for all of the great reasons that have been discussed here this evening. So I won't pile on to all the many reasons I agree with, specifically community safety, public safety, which is at the top of my mind, as well as property value. So my only question is, just to wrap it up quickly for time, and I hope that Deputy Mayor Thompson can directly speak to this since I've been a long-term constituent, is how this feedback heard here tonight and the many great concerns that have been raised will be addressed, and that they will be carefully considered, not just that this is a, something to check off in the box that you've done community consultation, but that this is something that you're seriously factoring in, because there have been a lot of great points raised here, and I wouldn't want all of these voices to be muted in the end. Thank you.
Councillor or Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Ian, and thank you very much, Ryan, for the question. At the beginning, when I spoke, I indicated that I think that it's really important, and it's imperative that a residents working group be formed. We have been told that you have to respond by the 7th of May. That's 18 days from today, and so it appears to me, and then of course the summer. The group will come to the community again. It seems to me that there has to be ongoing work and dialogue. We know for a fact that something will be built on this site. That's a given. And the question is, what is it? How will it impact the community? Will the community have their voices be heard and their concerns? I think that that's a great way. This is the second of these development that's been proposed in my community. One was last week. The presentation was made at 2444 Eglinton Avenue East. Similar situation where I raised the fact that the community has not been part of this process, and that's the way the process has been designed. But I'd like to ensure that we take our time in order to allow those who live in the community. I hear some people who are speaking to this issue who don't reside in our community, and it's great for them to have input. But the people who are most affected are those who live here, those who work here, those who are part of this area. And I think that this opportunity should be afforded to them to be able to voice their concerns. I'm sure we can come to some sort of consensus, and we may agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, it's really important that the community be allowed to provide their input, because what we do know, and we have heard from Annalee, that what is being proposed is not necessarily what's going to be here. So who knows what's that's going to be? So I think there is a need for us to have more dialogue. And if we have to take a little bit more time, I'm all in favor of that. So thank you very much, Ryan, for asking the question and to get my response. I do think, Ryan, by the way, I hope that you will join the community working group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. So I've got a few more. I'm going to go to Mark. Mark's name appears as housingnowto.com, but it's probably important to let others know that Mark's not on the project team. He's just got a website with the same name. So I just wanted to make that clarification, but Mark, please, over to you.
Right, can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfectly.
So as Ian said, our volunteers do not work for the city. We are volunteers. We're tracking all of these affordable housing sites around the city, all 17 of them, plus the modular sites. Deputy Mayor Thompson, we've met with you a number of times about various projects around the city. And a couple of questions. First of all, yes, we support the height and the density. Granted, we do not happen to live in this particular neighborhood, but as residents of Toronto, we are spending, I believe, $6.5 billion extending the subway out into Scarborough. Not going to fight you about that. We're happy to spend the money. We're happy for you to get good underground transit in Scarborough Centre. I'd be interested to know what the budget is for the new transit station, subway station that's being built at Scarborough Centre, and how far a walk away it is from the station. My understanding, the site is about 2 minutes walk away from there. We have been out to the site. We've been out to the site pre-COVID, during COVID, daytime, evenings. We do see parking issues in the neighborhood. The answer is really that if we're spending $6.5 billion on a subway, it's going to be harder for you to drive your car and park it on the street or on a surface parking lot in that neighborhood. For the folks who have raised concerns about their property values, we are happy to share with you all kinds of data from all kinds of sites around the city that shows that there is no impact on property values from these developments. I'm going to leave the good, clean neighborhood and good, clean neighbors thing to one side, because I can't believe somebody even said that tonight about doctors and nurses who might live in their neighborhood. we would also like to see if there is a one sheet. I didn't see a one sheet anywhere in your presentation that just clearly says height, unit, market unit, parking, daycare. I think it's different developers or different architects when they put these packages together. We just need that sort of uniformity in like a postcard so we can compare apples to apples. So my only specific question here are, what is the value of the Scarborough Centre underground subway station, and how far away is it from this site? I'm happy to help. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. And I think some of that information was in the presentation that Nima shared, but maybe not exactly in the format that you discussed. So we'll double check. But that I do know that Nima did present some stats, for lack of a better word, about that. So it might be worth double checking there, just for one thing. But I know that the question that I mean, there's lots of feedback that you shared there, but you said the two questions are the value of the new transit station and how far a walk is it from the station. So Kelly, I'm not sure if you're the best person, as a local planner, might have the answer to that, or at least know where we can get the answer to those.
We can certainly follow up and put you in contact with the appropriate person for transit related questions. What I can tell you is that we do have a revised proposed alignment that goes up McCowan Road, which has changed from a couple of years ago. And we do have a proposed location for the Scarborough Centre Station, which is on the east side of McCowan Road. So I would hazard a guess. I cannot give you an exact figure in meters or feet, but it would probably be slightly greater than 2 minutes, unless you walk tremendously fast. But I think it's a completely walkable, doable distance, and we are working via our Scarborough Centre study to improve pedestrian connections and other active mobility options in Scarborough Centre to make that route as easy and as pleasant and as beautiful as possible.
And that, I assumed it was only a few minutes away, so whether it's 2 minutes or 5 minutes, it's a short walk.
It's a short walk, correct.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So we've got at least one person we haven't heard from yet, and then if we have time, we'll go to some of the others who will be coming up for a second comment. So Fiona, please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question or share your feedback.
Hi, yes, thank you for hosting this. My name's Fiona. I am one of the condo unit owners in one of the adjacent buildings, and I just wanted to provide some of my feedback as well as comment and ask a question. I also work for the City of Toronto as a healthcare provider, so I have feet in both sides. But I do have a problem with the increasing congestion. Obviously, if the building had less numbers or was shorter, that would be more ideal. My question would be, I think it cut off the sound with the councillor. What would the qualifications be for the new residents were this to be built? It got cut off at the end of him speaking. So if you could clarify that, I would appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
I think that's actually a good question for Paul. Not to Deputy Mayor, not to interject, but I know that we've got someone from the SSHA, which is the sorry, I always get the acronym
Shelter,
wrong.
Support, and Housing.
Thank you, Paul. Paul can answer that question for you.
Yeah, sure. So these would be affordable housing units. So the affordable housing there's income requirements, which are 4 times the annualized rent. So for approximately a 1-bedroom, the maximum income is about 55,000, I believe. At this point, it does change every year depending on what the average market rents are that are published by CMHC. But it's about that for an 80%, and I believe there is a requirement for some deeper levels of affordability at this site. So those would have a different access point, but it would be the same kind of income, 4 times the annualized rent, and we would work with the provider to determine who the best fits are for those clients or for those tenants. And the units, the units would be accessed through what we hope to be a centralized access system by that point. We are going to committee and council shortly to get approval to start developing a system that for all affordable housing that will be accessed through a centralized system. So the opportunities would be made available as publicly as possible, and there'd be a transparent and fair approach to accessing the units.
Fiona, that got you the answer you're looking for? Was that at the level of detail, right?
More when the counselor was talking about whether or not this is Ontario housing, and he was, you know, specifying details further with that, it got cut off with the sound.
Okay, maybe I can just add to that. I was basically implying that it would not be, because some of the questions that I've had from a lot of residents were concerns around the fact that it's going to be Ontario or Toronto community housing, and it's not. It is, as Paul has just indicated, it is for people who are working in the city and can't afford to, let's say, put down the down payment and so on. Notwithstanding that fact, I mean, I think we still have to go through a process so that issues that the community is raising are addressed, and I think it's extremely important for us to do that.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor.
Great. So we got through at least everybody once. I'm going to go maybe to, I'll go to Ray just to see, Ray, I don't know if this is a new question or if your hand is still up from your earlier question, but I'll just go to you just in case. Ray, is there a new question or comment from you? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no, and then I'll go to Corey.
Hi, Ian. I'm talking from Corey's account, but this is Rebecca, his wife.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for letting me ask my question.
No problem.
I just wanted to jump in here to say, I'm first and foremost, I'm super excited to see projects that address the housing issues that are happening in Toronto. I think my husband and I are both products of the housing issues where, you know, we had to work really hard to be able to purchase a property and we will probably never own a home, and we needed to buy an apartment because rent was even more expensive, but I recognize that's a privilege itself. I do want to say that when, you know, I'm not in support of the project in its current form, and to be honest, when I heard about this project, I was aware that there was always intentions for a residential building, but it was always communicated that it would be a lower rise. This isn't a matter of interpretation. It was communicated that it would be a lower rise building. To be honest, when I heard about this, it made me feel like I wanted to move because I was going to lose. And I love living in this community. I was there when Councillor Thomas inaugurated our new park. I love being a part of this community, but I was afraid that we were going to lose some of the things that make our community special. And again, I've heard from folks that's quite clear. I don't know how much time you spent in our community, but that isn't simply just a vacant park or a city or parking lot. This is where people ride their bikes in the evening. People play street hockey. It is a part of the community, and I just want to acknowledge that I think bringing like 27 stories is going to seriously impact our community. And I understand that's in the interest of transit, but for a space where the RT itself is being decommissioned and is being moved toward McCowan, where there are more reasonable sites that Abigail had mentioned as well. So I just want to put that out there that I'm very concerned about how this is going to affect the aesthetic of our community. I think the shadow renderings were very minimized. I think there will be a significant shadow to Albert Campbell Square, and I'm concerned about how it's going to affect the aesthetic. More than anything, I did want to ask about, there was mention of a partnership for the development of this project, and I'm assuming that this is maybe along the lines of a private partnership, where in some cases that's where the city owns the land, but it's operated by a private party. And I was hoping you could speak more to what the operation of this building will look like, because I'm worried that private interests are going to direct how this building is even put together.
Okay, good. We'll start with Annalie there, who is joined by the phone. So Annalie, I might need to unmute you.
I think you should be able to hear me. Can you hear me?
Yep, good.
Okay. I think I might be back. So thanks for that question. I think first and foremost, one thing that we've seen across the city of Toronto is that as development has proceeded, buildings are getting taller. And I think one thing that Don Schmidt showed to us is that really the buildings that are proposed for 158 Borough Drive are not out of character for the other heights of the tall buildings located on Town Center Court, for example. So it really, given the affordability crisis in the city, it behooves us to use the site, since it has been designated as a Housing Now site, to the best of our abilities to maximize the opportunities for the affordable housing, while being very mindful of the work that the city and the community has done with respect to consultations around the Scarborough Centre Plan that Kelly mentioned earlier on in the meeting tonight. With respect to the public-private partnership question, I think that's a great question. And from our perspective, what we're able to do is we're able to go out to the market, get interested bidders in this project, and then through a contract, set out the heights and the delivery of community facilities that will be permitted on the site. Of course, prior to that, the purpose of a zoning bylaw is to establish that as a bylaw, so that that really regulates the heights that you'll see. I'm assuming that you're concerned, and I shouldn't assume, but that you're looking at 27 and 37 today, but it may go much beyond that in future. I think the point is that whatever is in the zoning bylaw is the expectation for what the maximum heights will be on this building. With that said, NEMA was very clear that we're still developing the development program for the site, and that there will be further opportunities for comment, and Councillor Deputy Mayor Thompson has spoken to what kind of input a working group can do. So I hope that helps to answer your question somewhat, and let me know if I missed anything.
Thanks, Annalie. And Nima, I'm not sure if you want to speak a little bit about the operations, or Paul, if that goes to you as well, just some of the mechanics of how the partner or the operator would actually manage the site, and what role the city might have in that as well.
Sure, certainly. So yeah, as Annalie did mention, we will be entering into a partnership agreement with a private sector developer, and we will have a number of agreements with that operator, including a land lease agreement, an operating agreement, and other delivery agreements, which will secure the city's expectations in terms of the long-term ownership, management, and operation of a future rental building. So those are some of the kind of contracts that we will be negotiating after we establish the base zoning approvals over the next year.
Okay.
I could add on. So the building would operate as a residential building, and the city would provide oversight to make sure that the affordability requirements are being met, and that the eligible people are going into those units. So, and we'll be doing annual verification of that as well.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So we're right at the right on time on our agenda to start the wrap up, and I did get to almost every hand that I saw from a person at least once. There are maybe one or two that just popped up at the end there, so we'll share the next steps in terms of how to share your feedback, and then I'll spend a minute or two on that, and then Deputy Mayor Thompson, I'll turn it over to you for any closing words. So we'll just put on screen a short slide that summarizes the next steps. While we're doing that, our facilitation team has been taking lots of detailed notes, both the questions and feedback that you've shared, as well as the answers that the project team gave. So we'll be preparing a very detailed but succinct summary of this discussion, and we'll be sharing it in draft with you, as I mentioned off the top, to make sure that we accurately documented the discussion. We would love if you'd take a minute to review that draft summary when we send it within a couple of weeks, just to make sure that we didn't miss or mischaracterize any of the feedback or important points that you shared. Because both, as I think the city and Creatio and Deputy Mayor Thompson have said, the feedback is very important to the process, and they want to make sure that they've got it right. So we'll be doing that in the immediate term. As I said, and others have said a few times, that there is, at least connected to this meeting, additional feedback window of up to and including May 7th. And that doesn't mean that that's the end of the process, as a few others have alluded and said directly. There are other meetings planned, but just connected to this meeting, if you would like to share any additional feedback or we didn't get to you in this 2 hours, you can share your questions or feedback either with Kelly, who you've heard from a bit tonight, at kelly.dines, DYNES, @toronto.ca, And you could also share your feedback online by going to createto.ca/158borough. So you can, those are questions specifically to 158 Borough Drive or to Kelly. And then if you have other broader questions about Housing Now, you can go to email housingnow@toronto.ca for any broader questions you might have. And of course, the local councillor and Deputy Mayor Michael Thompson's contact details are here as well if you would like to follow up with him as well. So we'll stop sharing the screen. I'll just remind everybody that we will be, or CreateTO will be posting the presentation on that website in the next day or so. And the recording of the meeting will also be posted there in case you'd like to rewatch some or all of this meeting. And I think that's it from us. Otherwise, I will turn it over to you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, for any final remarks.
Thank you very much, Ian. And may I just compliment you and your team for doing a fine job in terms of moderating this meeting. It's been fabulous. I want to thank the members of the community who have actually come out to, to convey their concerns, their thoughts, and on the idea. And for those who may not live in the community, for also coming in to provide your input. It's all very important. I think that, when you talk about partnership, I think, Nima, you spoke about partnership with the developers, partnership as well as with the operator and so on. I think you have to consider and ensure that you also understand that there has to be a partnership with the community as well. And so it's an opportunity to hear from the community. And that's why I'm proposing that members of the community who would like to participate in a community working group, Ian just pointed out the contact list. You can contact CreateTO planning and or my office so that we can work collaboratively to address many of the concerns that has been raised. I think that it is important for us to understand that what the residents are not saying is not saying, not in my backyard. What they are saying, and they're raising concerns. And I think that it's juxtaposed to the fact that some development was going to go to that site. The question is, how does that development fit into the community and the community's interests and the concerns that residents have had about parking, impact, etc. These are all the things that are considered. And so it's really important for the residents to understand, just because it's the city who is putting together this development application doesn't, reduce your ability to provide input about your concern about the impact in your own community. I want to also thank Kelly Dines. Kelly and I have been working together for some time now in a variety of areas with respect to the Scarborough Centre. There's a tremendous amount of planning that's happening with the Scarborough Town Centre itself and creating a real connect. That this is just a start of a dialogue and conversation so that we can actually put what is in the best interests of the community in place, and of course keeping in consideration with respect to the city's desire and attention and attention to responding to the housing needs that exist in the city, because there is a critical need that exists in the city, people who are working and are not able to afford their homes and so on. So I think we have to do more, but it has to be done in a balanced way. So I look forward to working with the residents and working with the team. I want to thank everyone for coming out, and I want to thank Mr. Schmidt for obviously your presentation. I know, as I said, you and your firm do fantastic work. Happy that your eyes and lens are looking at this, because some of the things that you've talked about, I think would fit really well once it actually takes into consideration the overall community's concerns and so on. Thank you very much for your time, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Take care, everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll be in touch.